Welcome to Unplanned and Untold, a podcast that dives into the real-life, unexpected twists of facing an unplanned pregnancy in college. Join us as we listen to the unplanned and untold stories of those who have overcome the odds in order to achieve their goals. Welcome back to another episode of Unplanned and Untold. I'm your host, Caitlin Willing, and today we have an inspiring guest whose story is a testament to resiliency, creativity, and success. She's a wife, mother of three, and a successful influencer who shares her passion for creating inviting spaces, celebrating life's moments with meaningful decor, and curating your wardrobe with confidence. Her journey began with an unexpected challenge, an unplanned pregnancy in college, but she's overcome the odds to become not only a thriving businesswoman, but also a source of inspiration for so many. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chapple to the podcast. Welcome, Chapple.
Hey, Caitlin. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to interview you. This has been a long time coming. I originally heard your story 4 years ago through a college student that I was mentoring who followed your amazing Instagram account.
Oh, yeah.
It is so wild.
It doesn't seem like 4 years ago.
I know. It's so crazy. She was actually doing a startup, venture, and your father was at the university helping her with that.
Right.
And I remember she had asked your dad, like, are you Chapple's dad? He probably felt so awesome. And the rest is history for all of our listeners. If you haven't caught up on the interview that I did with Chapple's father, Chapple Chandler, he's the current CEO and president of Baby Steps. You need to go back, take a listen, because we get your story through the eyes of your father, which is an interesting perspective.
Yes. It actually brought me to tears listening to it and hearing, you don't really get to hear like the inner thoughts of your parents as they're going through something. So that was very touching to hear him speak about me in that way. So it was
so awesome to hear that unique perspective. And we'd never had a man on the podcast before sharing.
What? That's so
we hit lots of birds with one stone.
Well, that's awesome.
Oh, yes. Well, Chapple, take us back to before you have your unplanned pregnancy. What does college look like? What are your dreams and aspirations?
Yeah. So, I was a very vibrant child. I was always, wearing crazy outfits. Like I had these red ruby slippers that I wore every day to kindergarten, like sparkly red shoes. I was just kind of out of the box from the beginning. And I've always been like a creative type of person, like doing projects, like art projects, or like even performing arts, like doing shows and stuff. Like in high school, I was like in drama and performing arts and all those things. So, and on the lines of like being creative, I really loved making videos. And we had a program in high school that was broadcast video production. So I loved the whole like production side of just like video storytelling. And so I thought that I was going to be going to, basically, I wanted to be in the film industry and do, either directing, some kind of storytelling. I wasn't really totally sure, but I knew I just loved like the whole idea of creative storytelling, like through video. At one point, I changed a few times, but that was what I set out to do.
Right. So where did you end up enrolling in college?
So it's kind of a complicated story. So I was 17. I'll try to make it quick though.
No, you're good.
So I was the youngest in my class. So I was 17 going to college. Wow. And the summer before college, I remember having a conversation with my parents, like, I just don't feel like I'm ready for this. And I couldn't even believe the words were coming out of my mouth. Like I had been prepared. My parents had been preparing me for this all my life, but it must have been the Lord because it set me down a different path. So I decided to do a gap year program, which was like a year between high school and college, where this was an academic gap year through the Chick-fil-A Life Shape Foundation. Yes. And so we grew up in Georgia. So it was in Georgia, and it was really intensive, like a lot of just it was really faith-based. And so it was a lot of like leadership training and like figuring out like who you are, how you were created, and like your gifts and things like that. And there was also like a Eastern Europe mission trip that we went on for like a month. And it was so life-changing. I mean, I think I grew in a lot of ways, and like that's really where I feel like my faith started taking root. But I think for a long time, so backing up just a little bit, like kind of how I got to where I felt like I was struggling in some ways, but like when I was in high school, I had a traumatic event happen to me when I was a young teenager, and kind of that sent me into like a downward spiral, like emotionally, mentally. I remember the thoughts coming into my head that I was worthless, that I was never going to be good enough, I had messed up, or it was my fault, and things like that. And I've come to find out like none of that is true, but I believed it at the time. And so a lot of like my decisions as a young adult were either out of this like insecurity mindset, this like worthlessness mindset, or they were just like seeking, like I was trying to figure it out. Like I was always doubting myself. So as much as I like had these like hopes and dreams, I just always had something that I was struggling with internally. And I think that is a big part of like how I ended up where I was with relationships and things like that.
Absolutely. So what year were you in college when you found out you were unexpectedly pregnant?
So I was a sophomore in college. So I had finished the gap year program, and I went on to Savannah College of Art and Design. I had like a scholarship, and I absolutely loved it. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And just, I took all kinds of classes like drawing and design, and just got to like explore like different sides of my creativity. And meanwhile, I was in a relationship with someone from my hometown, and that went on for about 5 years on and off from at some point from end of high school into college. And so I found out, so we had broken up by the time I had found out that I was pregnant. And so I kind of kept it to myself for a little bit, but I just knew that like something was different. I could just tell. So I just went and got a pregnancy test, and it was positive, and it was truly like the most like earth-shattering thing at the time that I could imagine going through. Like, and when I say earth-shattering, it was in my mind, it was like, how am I going to like do this? Like, how am I going to recover from this? Like, I felt like my life was falling apart, and it was, I was afraid, but something in me, like I knew I had a little bit of like a peace about it. Like I just knew that I was supposed to be a mom, and I have always wanted to be a mom. So a little part of me was like, oh my gosh, like I get to be a mom. This wasn't the right timing, but I really want this. So I think the hard part was just like telling my parents, and that was probably the hardest moment of all of it, because once I got past that and the initial shock of it like kind of wore off for everybody, they were nothing but supportive. So, but it was a tough thing to realize for sure.
So take me back to telling your parents. Were you nervous? Did you have an idea of how they were going to react?
I was so nervous. I thought that they would disown me, or that they would just be extremely disappointed at best. And I think I was met with unexpected love and grace that I was not, I just wasn't expecting that. But I think that it was definitely a blessing from the Lord, because had I not had their support, there's just no telling like what I would have done from there. But they knew and like could see that I was in a state of just complete like desperation, like just I think I really felt like I had messed up. Like Because I had always been like raised that you're going to, wait until you're married, you're going to get married, then you're going to have kids. And so to face your parents and to say, I know this is not what you wanted for me. This was not the plan. It's not my plan. Doing that was definitely one of the hardest things. But again, like they were just so, they were disappointed, but they got over that disappointment pretty quick, especially when they met Molly Kate. They completely were like, oh, how could we have ever lived our lives without her?
Sometimes in our minds, we think it's going to be this horrible talk, or the most worst things possible are going to happen, like being kicked out or disowned and all of the things. And sometimes we're pleasantly surprised that they don't react how we initially think. I mean, it is a life-altering situation for them as well. And I think as time has grown on and being a parent myself, I can now relate a little bit to, oh my gosh, like my child having a child affects my world as well. And giving them space to feel all of those things is super important, but we don't think about it at the time. You know, we're going through it personally.
Right. And I think in my mind, I just thought, I'm strong. Like, I'll get through this. I'm going to have this baby. And then I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to finish my degree and everything's going to be great. Like, in no way did I ever think that it would be hard as it was. And so I think that was the biggest shock is I'm more of like an optimistic person, and I just don't think of like the possible risks or anything. And I was just like, oh, it's going to be great. So after getting past
those rose-colored glasses are beautiful. We need people like you in the world.
Well, it's a gift at times for sure, but at times not so much. But
So how do you process going back to school, finishing? Was dropping out ever a thought, or did you know you wanted to finish?
I knew I had to finish. I knew that there was not an option for me but to finish, because I had gone back to SCAD for one more quarter, and I had we were on this field trip, and I was not taking very good care of myself. I had not eaten hardly anything that morning. I was nauseous, and I ended up we were standing in this lecture hall for like 45 minutes before we were supposed to tour this theater. And I passed out, blacked out, hit the floor. I looked up, everyone's staring at me, looking down at me. And I'm like a movie. Yes, like a movie. I was it literally it was the weirdest thing. And so I think at that point I was I don't know how much longer I can keep going to class and keep doing this while I'm pregnant. And my parents, telling them about it, they really wanted me to come home. So I finished out that quarter, and then I moved back home, and I worked until Molly Kate was born. So she was born in August. So I took the spring and the summer to work a minimum wage job at a boutique at a little gift shop. And it was humbling. I actually loved that job, but also I was $6 an hour is not going to cut it to pay for this child. I was trying to decorate her nursery and do all this stuff, and I had no money. So anyways, I ended up getting crafty with that. But I think just really it was a wake up call for sure. I was I've got to finish my degree. There's just no way. I don't see how I'll be able to provide for her. And I really I wasn't dating anyone. So I really just didn't have the idea in my mind that I would have a husband to take care of us,
Okay. So you knew this was it. You had to provide for you and your daughter and figure out a way. Honestly, I remember those times working minimum wage jobs. And then I went back to waitressing when I was pregnant with a big old belly, and humbling years of my life. But honestly, I look back at those times and I think to myself, I am who I am because of those times. I mean, having that unplanned pregnancy provided me the opportunity to produce some grit and take the stubbornness that had always been in me and turn it into determination for something better, which was finishing school and providing a life for my child that I wanted him and thought he deserved to have. Do you feel the same type of emotions when you look back at younger Chapple, pregnant Chapple, trying to scrape by?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I definitely developed some grit during those years. I worked. So once I had Molly Kate, she was born in August, and then I kept working and keeping her at home until she was old enough to like go to daycare. And then I started. I transferred to University of West Georgia, which was a huge. I guess it was kind of a huge letdown for me that my parents were like, you cannot go back to Savannah. Like, it was 5 hours from where we lived.
Right.
Having to accept that like your dreams like have to change. Like, this child has to take priority. That was a big wake up call for me. And, you know, just learning to accept things aren't going to be perfect. Your life is not going to always be as it was planned out or as you planned it out in your head. And you have to make it work, and you have to keep going and find something else that you can be successful in and passionate about. And so that's what I did. So I enrolled at West Georgia, and I started taking classes. I mentioned this before, but I was exploring different things. So I did interior design, and this was like the peak of the recession. So the professor, there was only one professor in the program, and he was like, basically, you're not going to get a job when you get out of college, because this was like tough financial times for like the economy. Like, interior designers were just not getting work.
Right.
So, and they were actually closing down the program because nobody was majoring in that. So I kind of was left with a few, like, very little options. And so I ended up majoring in mass communications and public relations. So that was, it all worked out because I ended up going into marketing. So, and I did that for 10 years. But backing up to college, just being a student at West Georgia, like I waited tables, I worked at a marketing internship. And then I joined a sorority. Like, I did lots of things.
Okay, pause. We need to talk about the sorority aspect of this, because it's always interesting how Greek life mixed in with unplanned pregnancies. Talk to us. You joined a sorority after Molly Kate was already born.
I know. It's definitely not the norm. And probably most sororities probably would look at a woman with a baby and think, there's just no way she can do any of the activities we're doing, Right. And so, but it just happened. I just decided to go through like Rush as a like technical sophomore. And basically I got cut from a lot of sororities, but I ended up getting to be in the one that I wanted, which was the same one that my mom and sisters were in. I think at that point, I just had felt like I had missed out on a lot of my college experience because I had gone to different schools, and I was really looking for friends. And and honestly, like, it was a blessing in disguise, because my sorority sisters would babysit my daughter. While I waited tables at night and stuff like that. I mean, it's crazy. But, and I do want to mention her dad being involved and his family being involved too. And of course my parents were. So everybody, now my parents had moved to Birmingham by this time. So they had, in the middle of the recession, career change. So they had moved there. So it was really just me and Molly Kate in an apartment for a while. And thank goodness that, I did have that group that was so supportive. But they also kind of like knew my situation. And I don't think I had to do all of the things that everyone, like, they didn't make me go to all the socials and stuff. Sure. But they were super sweet, and they loved Molly Kate. So,
such a beautiful community to surround yourself with, to embrace you, because it's usually the opposite that we hear about Greek life. So I just love hearing that they had stepped up and helped you out. Yeah. I mean, I think back at times when Hudson was a baby in that apartment, it was just the two of us. And I think to myself, how did we do it? Do you ever have those moments looking back thinking, how did I do this? Because you were a single mom for how long?
Yes, all the time I look back and I'm like, how in the world, how did I do that? It's some kind of survival mode that kicks in, I think.
Yes.
And especially when you have that mama bear protective mode over your child, you just fight and you work and you just do it. Like you said, it takes grit and determination and it kicks in. And that is how we got through. Honestly, that and the people around us that were supportive. Of course, it was a strain for sure, financially in every possible way, but we got through it.
And one memory I love to take our guests back to is the day that you graduated. Take us back to that day. What was it like walking across the stage, knowing you'd accomplished something so incredible and you'd beat the odds?
It was such a proud moment for me. And I knew we had a brighter future ahead where we were going to be financially stable. I knew in my mind, we're going to be financially stable. I'm going to be able to give her the life that, I had growing up, that I want for my child. And eventually, we'll find someone to complete our family, and we did. My, Molly Kate actually claims she introduced me to my husband. So,
oh my goodness, so sweet. And y'all have children now together as well.
Yes, we have two kids, and they're just adorable. And they were just always part of the plan. How could this have happened? And the fact that Molly Kate introduced me to my husband is how it's just crazy how it all works out in the end, and how nothing is wasted. It's all for a purpose.
Exactly. I feel like that's a lie that a lot of us believe as women who've experienced unplanned pregnancies and don't have the support of the father of the child, or we're not in a relationship with them any longer, is, will I ever find love again? Will I ever find a man who will accept me and this baby and want to marry me and start a family? A lot of those negative thoughts can seep in and take root. And what advice would you give to a woman who is walking a walk just like you, waiting for Mr. Perfect?
So that was one of the things that I dealt with for a really long time as a single mom, is just there's a loneliness, just a really big hole in your heart that feels like I want someone to do this with me, like a partner. And not having that is definitely it's tough, but it isn't forever. And so I would say to someone that you have to just continue to focus on yourself and your child, and put yourself and your child first, and keep on developing yourself, and the right person will come. But I was a single mom for, I think it was a total of 8 years, because Molly Kate was, she was 8 when I met Bo, and then we got married when she was 10.
So I want to talk about what you're doing now and how your unplanned pregnancy and all the different paths that your college life took you landed you to this booming business that you have as an influencer and all of the projects that you have going now.
Okay, so when we moved to Birmingham, so I started my career in marketing, and I spent 10 years in the corporate marketing, corporate communications world. So that was so great because it was such a learning experience for me. It was everything all kind of adds up to where you end up. So I did not ever think that I would end up where I am, but all the tools and things that I learned along the way have truly prepared me to do what I'm doing now. I mean, even just stuff like learning how to design websites and things that I learned in the marketing space, and all that stuff that I've done now, that I am currently doing now. So in 2020, I started a blog, and I kind of just thought it would be a supplemental income thing. And then it just so it started out with my husband and I, we renovated a house while we were engaged. We weren't living in the house, but we were renovating this house that we had planned on moving into. So we moved in right after we got married. And so I had done all this renovation work, and I wanted to like share that on the blog and the Instagram.
Yes.
And then I started doing decorating in my house. And so that was just an interest of mine. And then like DIY projects. So same kind of thing. I've always been interested in just like all the creative projects. So I started doing that, and it just kind of evolved over time. Like I started doing some fashion content, mixing in and all this stuff. So what was just like a supplemental income turned into a full-time job, like within like a year.
Wow.
So it was pretty crazy. I kind of didn't really even know, like when I graduated from college, they didn't have anything. Like they didn't have anything called an influencer. Like that wasn't a thing.
No, this is newish.
It wasn't a job. So like I would never have planned this, but like, I guess I had tried to create a blog like 2 times in the past, like once in college, once after that. And then this was the 3rd time. So I guess 3rd time's the charm. But
there you go.
I mean, I always kind of like had that crafty DIY side of me that I wanted to share ideas and stuff. And I'm a big Pinterest girl. I love like Pinterest stuff. So that's kind of like how that all started. And so I just, in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to like have a blog that maybe like I'll have ads on there and somehow make money. And I didn't even understand how it all worked. But once I jumped in, I just learned it as I went. And now it's just become like this kind of more of like a brand, I guess you could say, but not really. I don't have any like products, but it's more of like just sharing like style, home.
Yes.
And I've started to incorporate some just more like faith-based stuff too into it. So,
I mean, you said something quite profound a little bit earlier in the interview about how nothing is wasted, and seeing how, your major changed quite a few times, or, you go to marketing now, you thought you'd be in theater and acting. I mean, that is a beautiful theme over your story, is nothing is wasted, because where you are today, all of those experiences have kind of been pulled together to get you to present day Chapel and your business. And it's so beautiful to see, because I hope our listeners who are either not passing an exam, or maybe they have to change their major, they can hear from your story that it's not over, girl. Like those experiences are going to be used, and eventually you will get to be where you are if you keep pushing forward.
Absolutely. And honestly, just having the flexibility of like knowing that everything might not work out like exactly how you envision, but it works out for exactly what you need. And it all just comes together. I mean, even thinking about the video editing class that I took in high school, and the fact that I'm making little videos that I'm sharing on Instagram every day, like who would have thought that would have come in handy, like in what I'm doing? But like it does. And it honestly is so much better than anything I could have dreamed of for my own self. Like I'm so glad I didn't end up, in the movie industry. That would have been, there's
totally
definitely not, definitely not where I would have wanted to be, and not a great place to be raising a family. Yes. So I'm so happy, but it took a long time and a lot of determination and hard work to get there. But it definitely is. It's just, you can't give up. It is the thing that I really, had to tell myself many times, but you just have to keep going. And sometimes you just have to take it one day at a time. And you may not know like what tomorrow or 5 years or 10 years brings, but it will all, you'll end up where you're supposed to be if you keep on, keep going, keep fighting. So
what are your hopes for the future when it comes to conversations surrounding unplanned pregnancies?
I mean, it is so different than when I was in college and pregnant. I felt like at that time there was such a shame and like a stigma surrounding unplanned pregnancies, especially like in college or young ladies. And now it's so different. I've seen like the conversation change over the years. I've seen people it just seems like people don't feel like they have to hide it. as much. It seems like, even with programs like Baby Steps, you can tell that people are starting to see this differently. They're starting to see these women as, people that need to be supported, first of all, and that it's honorable, like, to be able to choose to have your baby and choose your college degree and still go on to have a life that's successful. So I think I would like to see that continue to evolve in that direction. I think that, like, it would be great if, we champion women in their careers, mothers in college who experience unplanned pregnancies. Like, if we can just champion them and continue to support them and look at them in a way that is loving and graceful, I would just love to continue to see that more and more. And I would love to see that all across, the nation.
Firsthand, there's a need.
Yes, there's a huge need. There's a huge need.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who don't know, this podcast came out of the nonprofit called Baby Steps. And this is what Chapel is talking about, where we help women experiencing unplanned pregnancies on college campuses have their education and their baby. And we do this by providing housing, community, and support. And we have one fully functioning hub at Auburn University. We are hoping to open our doors in Tuscaloosa in 2025. And, Chapel, with your dad on as president and CEO, he is hoping we open 3 to 5 more hubs across the nation in 2025. So we are really excited to get these resources in the hands of these women who desperately need it, because it's time. It's time to talk about this. It is an overlooked, underserved population of students. And I think this platform is allowing women like you and myself and the countless other women I have interviewed the ability to share our story and share our voice and the narrative of what happened, but also where we are today and how that unplanned pregnancy actually propelled us to be the best version of ourselves. So thank you, Chapel, for being so transparent about your story and your dreams and aspirations for, this to become a resource on campuses everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people this all the time, that Molly Kate, my daughter, like, she saved me. Like, I was very much going down a bad path. I think I really didn't know who I was. I felt like I was just very, insecure. I was very looking for a male relationship that would make me feel, loved and accepted and approved of and all of these things. And honestly, like, having Molly Kate, it woke me up. It made me grow up. And she was exactly what I needed. And I would not change it. Like, I wouldn't do it any other way. She's 16 now. Like,
I can't believe it.
It's crazy. She's a wonderful person. And I'm really grateful. She's a gift. So.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing your story and your beautiful family. Man, we just appreciate all of the love and support that comes from you and your family. And for all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed that episode, as we are committed to bringing you the real, raw stories of those who have defied the odds and achieved their goals. But we're not stopping there. We are dedicated to improving our podcast quality so that we can reach an even wider audience. If you believe in the power of these untold narratives, consider donating or sponsoring this podcast by visiting unplannedanduntold.com.